Good afternoon and welcome to the Moore Kingston Smith webinar on considerations for employees. I mean, it's been a pretty difficult few weeks, it's flown by, and I know lots of my clients have either furloughed staff or reduced their working hours or perhaps cut their pay. And obviously these aren't decisions that are taken lightly, and these decisions have huge knock-on effects to the rest of staff and the team and their morale. And important also is considering what we want the shape of the agency to look like when we come out of this, and what talent that we want to preserve for the longer term, for when things do eventually start to return to normal. Just let you give a bit of a sneak preview to some of the results to the survey that we did been doing over the last week and a half amongst our media and marketing services clients. So 28% of respondents said that if they were comparing the number of employees throughout 2020 compared to 29, then in light of COVID-19, then about a third of them would be looking to make redundancies to reduce the staff numbers from one year to another. And when we did this survey pre-COVID, very, very few agencies said that they would be reducing staff numbers through redundancies. 22% said they would be reducing working time across the board, and most of those were considering reducing that to a 4-day week. 40% said they were contemplating salary cuts across the board, and the most popular level of salary cut was something up to the region of 20%. And 85% of the agencies that responded said they were considering using the furlough scheme, and it was around sort of 50-50 as to whether they were going to just give the government grant to people, i.e. the £2,500 a month, or whether they were going to top them up to their market salary. And of course, as well as all of these business considerations, just as important is to think about the well-being of our staff as well, especially those that might be self-isolating alone or those that haven't got access to outdoor space. So I'd like to introduce Amy Cresson and Richard Cummings, two of our senior HR consultants, will be taking you through all of the key things that you need to think about in this situation. Both are senior consultants at Moore Kingston Smith HR Consultancy, and both have a lot of experience in working with media and marketing services companies, looking at things like reward structures, complex employee relations and engagement projects, and well-being projects. There is a chat box. Please do use that to submit questions as we go. If they've got broader appeal, then we'll open them up and answer them online. If they're very specific to you, then perhaps Amy or Richard will seek to answer those questions on a one-to-one by the chat box, but do submit them as we go, and we'll pause every so often and have a look at what questions we've got. So without further ado, I will hand over to Richard.
Thanks very much. So I was going to give a quick overview of where we are at the moment. So in terms of furlough, most organisations have furloughed at least somebody by now, I'd have thought. The portal opened yesterday. Amazingly, it didn't crash, but it is going incredibly slow. So something like 140,000 companies put claims in for furloughing employees as of March and April. It's about 1 million people. We're expecting those numbers to go up. So the rules are still changing. It's still evolving the whole time. I think we have to remember that furlough was kind of thrown together within a couple of weeks, really, and the guidance has been plugged in by all sorts of people at the revenue and in the government advisory team. There's still some things we don't know. There's an awful lot of stuff we do, and the clarity we're still waiting on in areas such as holidays and stuff like that. But what we do know is that really you have to try and play within the rules, and the rules are actually quite loose. So we're going to talk about that a bit and about what you can and can't do. So communicating with your employees while they're furloughed. Now, this is a very unusual situation that we're in at the moment, in the fact that actually we're not just shutting people down, shutting roles down and jobs down. What we are actually seeing is that people are self-isolating. So those that live on their own, if we furloughed them and just expected them to fend for themselves almost, it doesn't really have the caring, sharing attitude that we would expect in this sector. So, but the guidance does say you can communicate with your employees. What it actually says is that they can't do any provide any services or any income generating activity. So effectively they can't do any work, but what they can do is undertake training, and they can undertake specific training for you. So if that means that you can do that, then obviously you can communicate with them, but it's what you are communicating and how you're doing it. There's it's quite important if you've only got a selection of employees that have been furloughed. Obviously, if you furloughed everybody, you could just communicate with them all in one go. But while you've got some people that are on furlough and others that are still working, the chances are that you're going to be quite selective about what you're pushing out. So you're going to send emails out to your employees that are still working about what's going on in the business, and those that are furloughed who aren't actually accessing their emails, partly because they shouldn't, and partly because they just won't. They're not going to see the same level of updates, but you should still be communicating with them. So communicating what's going on within the company is incredibly important. I don't think that you can just expect people to be furloughed for effectively what could be 4 months from the start of March when the scheme was opened, or backdated to at least, right the way up to the end of June where it closes off, and not touch base with them in any shape or form, and particularly if the organisation is changing or there's some troubling times ahead. So the things like company updates you should be communicating, and there are things like social events, staff news and wellbeing initiatives that you should be doing as well, and you should definitely be sharing that with those employees that are furloughed. Okay, it is difficult to keep employees engaged during this period. Originally the whole concept of why you were furloughing was to prevent redundancies, and that was, Boris Johnson was incredibly clear on that when he announced it originally, and he said, look after your employees and we'll look after you, don't go and make mass redundancies. We have got something in place. Furlough comes out, and then those people that are furloughed probably thinking, I'm being furloughed because I haven't been made redundant, and if I hadn't been furloughed I would have been made redundant. And that may be the case, but actually it isn't the case in every instance. It's just the fact there isn't really any work to do, and whilst you could have kept them employed, there's no real need to at the moment, particularly when the government is bankrolling 80% of their salary. The social event is quite a difficult social event. You're obviously going to have to do it online. It's going to have to be remote, but we've done it internally. We've had Friday drinks and stuff like that where everyone turns up. We have like a meeting just like this, and we have a drink, and we've played a few games and just to keep everybody going. There's there's other things that you can do. You don't have to do it for everybody. You can ask for teams. So some managers to have events with or have socials with some of their employees. You don't have to feel like you've got to do the whole agency. The communication obviously helps. The more you communicate, the more likely you are going to keep your employees engaged, or at least interested in the organisation for when they return. It is important to remind everyone that they are valued, and that actually they do add to the business, and they are furloughed at the moment. We understand that, but there's still other things that they can do, such as the training, and undertake that as well. Okay. Not everyone's heard of an EAP scheme. EAP is Employee Assistance Program. They are incredibly good. We certainly advocate them. They're relatively inexpensive. If those of you that have got them, basically what they do, they're an employee helpline. They're not you, they're not us. They are they're in the ether somewhere, and you give a telephone number to your employees. It's fully confidential, and they can ring, and you will never know. You may know the numbers of people that have called, but that would be the extent of it. You wouldn't know what people had rung about or what they'd used it for. But it goes from everything from, like this time, especially what we're going through now, it covers things like loneliness, depression and anxiety, but it also does other things such as debt management and advice around that sort of stuff. And apparently divorces are on the up, so it does give advice around divorce as well. So if you don't have an EAP scheme, I would encourage you to have a look at one. There's a couple that we recommend, and we can share that with you. Buddy up and encourage your colleagues to check in on each other. I think this is really important. I think really there's a lot, particularly in this sector, there's a lot of people that do work on their own a lot of the time. So the fact that they're still working on their own, but there's less people in the organisation to talk to because more people have been furloughed, I think it is important that they have touch points that aren't necessarily their managers and their colleagues and their peers, etc. furlough rotation, this is permissible under the scheme. That actually, say you've got 20 people, you could effectively, the minimum period of furlough is 3 weeks, as I assume most people know. You could effectively furlough half the agency for 3 weeks, and then you could bring them back and furlough the other half for another 3 weeks if you wanted to. It is a way to manage it. I don't know if it's the best way to manage it. That's down to each agency, but it is possible to do that. There are a few organisations that are doing it because it feels they're balancing the pain a little bit. There is something about the fact that particularly those people that are paying the top-up amount. So if you're furloughing your employees and paying them 100%, effectively you're paying some of your employees 100% of their salary to sit at home, and it is beautiful weather at the moment, and if they've got a garden, they're in it. And your other employees, you're paying them exactly the same they were earning before to actually do the work, and they could effectively be doing more work because they could be doing the work of people that are furloughed that aren't allowed to do any work for you over that period. So furlough rotation is a consideration.
Richard, I'm just going to interrupt there. We've had a few questions on furloughing, which might be worth just asking now. I mean, I suppose this is linked to this point around being able to sort of furlough for this 3-week minimum at a time, isn't it? And then you can unfurlough somebody and then you can furlough them again. So somebody's asked, if we've furloughed somebody and then we've won some new business and we need the resource back in the business, can they refuse to come back to work and offer furlough?
Can the employee refuse to come back?
Yeah.
No, not really. So the employee is an employee, and while they're furloughed, this is just a period of workless time. So they are obligated to return. However, there are an awful lot of people. If you're asking them to physically return to London, there's an awful lot of people that don't want to return to London because the government advice is stay in if you can and work from home if you can. So they could ask or request to be furloughed. You're under no obligation to do it. The alternative to that is you could offer them unpaid leave. But the general rule of thumb is this is effectively it's a layoff, and when a layoff period closes, you would expect everybody to come back to work. So yes, if you have won the work, it's perfectly legitimate for you to say, yes, we want you back. This period of furlough is now over. You should give notice, but really you could give a day. You know, it's going to be quite reactive, I'd imagine. So if you've won a bit of work and they want it next week, and you've got people on the books, effectively you're paying them, and you want them back to work next week, you can have them back next week.
Thank you. And also another question around bank holidays in this 3-week minimum period. So if there's a bank holiday falls in the 3-week period you furloughed them for, does that still count as 3 weeks, or do we have to do 3 weeks in a day to get the minimum period?
No, that counts. That counts. So the guidelines around holidays is so vague, but what we do know is that actually the holiday period won't break the furlough. So in that 3-week period, there was 2 bank holidays in April. There's going to be another 2 in May. We do know that will count as part of the period. So yes, that's absolutely fine. As it looks, the way the guidance is at the moment, and it may change, the guidance is that you have to pay 100% for those 2 bank holidays. So you have to give them their actual salary because it's a holiday day. If you don't want to do that, then you can give those 2 days back in lieu.
All right, okay.
But this is changing. Sorry. The whole guidelines, the website, all over the government website says that they're keeping holidays under review. So anything could happen with that. So I would constantly check that you can have a look on our hub, and we're doing our frequently asked questions and doing the updates all the time, and check what the situation is on holidays every time you've got a question about it.
Okay, great. I mean, I think that there are a lot of questions, and there's a lot of uncertainty around the holidays. I mean, somebody else has asked, can we ask employees to use up some of their annual leave whilst they're on furlough?
Okay, so this is the bit. So what we do know is that employees are entitled to book holiday in furlough, but if they book holiday, what they should be paid is the 100% of their salary. So they should be paid at their normal rate, because that's the working time regulations and all of that. What we don't know 100% 100% definitely is whether or not you can actually claim for that period. So we do know it won't break the furlough. So if they're furloughed for a 3-week period and there is a week holiday in that, the furlough is still the 3-week period and the holiday doesn't affect it. What we don't know is if you can make the claim back. And it might be that you might be able to do it now and try and get the money back, because when you go onto the portal, there's no specific section about where these people are on holiday or not. But it might be that when they start digging it around or change the rules later on, it might be that it actually has worked against you. So you might want to hold fire on that.
So it is the case, isn't it, Ben, that if people are on furlough, in theory, they will come back with their full holiday entitlement. They won't have used up any of their holiday entitlement whilst they're on furlough, whereas there might be people, or there will be people, who may have had to use holiday whilst they're working.
Yeah, that's right. So your furlough, if you just furlough them and don't let them take any holiday over that period, and you furlough them for 3 or 4 months, you're absolutely right. While your other employees, while they're working, you may still request them to take their holiday, or at least take some of their holiday during this period while it's quiet, and they would be you can force them to do it if you wish. And those that are on furlough, they're still accruing it, so their holiday entitlement for the whole year will remain the same. So if they come back on the 1st of July, then actually, yes, they've got potentially a whole year's worth of holidays to take in that 6-month period. But what we do know is that the government said that actually you don't have to stick with you don't have to be so rigid. Now we're relaxing the rules, and that it's 5.6 weeks minimum that every employee has to take, and they've relaxed that to say actually over the next 2 years you can eke that out. So it's going to put huge strain on the agency for people to try and use all of their holiday in that 6-month period, so July to December. You could say actually we want you to carry some of that into next year.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay,
carry on.
Thanks very much. Okay, so reduced hours and or reduced pay. Okay, so furlough. We do know that furlough comes to an end at the end of June. So it was obviously until last week. For those of you who don't know, it was going to be the end of May, but it's been extended by a further month. So it could be it's just business as usual on the 1st of July, and everyone comes back to work. And what I think is really interesting about this, and well, historically recessions, because that's effectively what this is, isn't it? Is that generally there's a very slow burn from to ease out of a recession, whereas potentially there may not be here. It could be the lockdown gets lifted, everyone returns back to work on the 1st of July, it's just back to normal. All of your clients are starting to come back to work. They want those projects done. It all just kicks off. You know, technically, it's probably a bit utopian, but it could all just start again. That's highly unlikely. I think it will be a bit of a burn. I think there's going to be a bit of a period of time where the lockdown's not going to end immediately like that. I think it's going to be slow, and I don't think it's going to be the 1st of July when everything goes back to normal, but that is conjecture. But I do think, you know, September, October, we should start seeing some normality return. People that are on reduced hours or reduced pay, so those organisations that have already said to people, we haven't got the work for you to do 5 days a week, we want you to do 2 or 3, and we're going to pay you for that accordingly. There is no end date for that at the moment. There isn't this 1st of July magic return to work date. It's basically until the work comes in again. So I think it's really, really important for you to talk to those employees that are actually on reduced pay or doing reduced hours, and to say what your plans are. And obviously you don't have any concrete ones because you don't know, but you need to keep them in the loop. And even if you inform them that you don't know, but this is what you think, that's better than doing nothing. And think about timelines, because that 1st of July is going to be the timeline for everybody else who is furloughed at the moment. Okay, so how do you support them? I've already talked about EAP schemes. I really think you should advise that if you can, and that even if people don't seem to need it, you should definitely put it out and remind people that they're there. Your employees that are at work, you really do need to relax, if you haven't already, relax some of your policies around the working day. And I know that there has to be flexibility for some people. You know, there's no kids at school at the moment. Anyone that's got childcare issues, it's a problem. There's the change in hours. So can people work different hours? Do they really necessarily have to work the core hours as you would expect normally? I think there's going to be some flexibility around that as well. And obviously, if they do need to talk to somebody, generally they're going to have to talk to people during the day, and that's when you're expecting them to be at work. So and yes, if you've got people who are working reduced days or reduced hours and they want to take additional employment or additional jobs somewhere else, and I think you should allow that. It should be permissible. And actually, we also know that people that are furloughed can take additional employment if they want to. And whilst it may seem crackers that they're being paid 80%, potentially 80% of their salary, if not 100%, and they can get a job delivering groceries for a supermarket and earning a 40-hour week payment or wage for that, that is permissible. So those people that are on reduced hours, you would expect them to have the same level of flexibility, and you should probably allow that. Okay, so the morale, we've already talked about people that are trying to keep the engagement going. That's one thing. Trying to keep people motivated and keep the morale up is another. And there's all sorts of different techniques around this. Some of this, I think we've covered this in things like the socials and stuff like that. But actually, you can do more, and you can talk about what people have done historically and celebrate that, even though it was ages and ages ago, because things that you can discuss, and you can talk about future events, because you may still have things that are in the pipeline that just stopped. They didn't necessarily get cancelled, and you can talk about who's best placed to do those in the future. There's all sorts of things you can do, but everybody that's in their agency is going to know better than everybody else. Okay, so we're not quite recovered just yet, but we are getting there. So when we come to the end of it, this magic 1st of July date, it might be that you want to consider redundancies. It might be that you want to consider short-time working. You might want to consider doing pay cuts if you haven't already, and you might want to do that for a longer-term period. I know that if it doesn't all just pick up again naturally in July, which we don't think it will realistically, you are going to have to make some longer term plans, because the furlough scheme is going to come to an end at some point. I don't think the government's going to keep bankrolling it forever. It's just not possible. You might want to review your internal structure. I know that people have spoken about redundancies, and as Esther said, there are people considering it that weren't considering it before. Really, those we've already said about people that are furloughed and they feel exposed or at risk about the fact that they could be first in the frame for the redundancy, but that's something that you should consider now, to be honest. And if that is what people are thinking, and that is what you're thinking, so those furloughed employees are probably going to be at the top of the list, then that's something that you should have a look at and see whether realistically, if you did a fair selection criteria, is that what the outcome would be. As always, every redundancy situation is incredibly difficult. The more you plan it, the easier it is, and but the people that want to go and the people that you want to go, if they marry up, that always works really well. So consider voluntary redundancies. That is an alternative to carrying out selection criteria as well. And then also consider things like statutory notice versus contractual notice. There are funny points in law. So if you've got somebody who's working short time, so you've got someone working 3 days a week, for example, and you put them into a redundancy consultation, and then you put them at risk and they have to work out their notice period. If their statutory notice exceeds their contractual, then they would have to be paid out their full pay at the 5 days a week. So for example, if you've got somebody that's on a 2-month notice period, but they've worked with you for 9 years, the law says that they have to, the notice period that you have to give them is 1 week for every year. So that's 9 weeks. That exceeds their contractual. Therefore, you'd have to pay them 9 weeks at full pay. If it was the other way around, you could just pay the short time working amount. So that would be the 3 days a week. It is a convoluted part of employment law, but it does exist. So it's always worth taking advice. So your remaining employees, as always, when we talk about redundancies, and we've done a lot of those over the years, that the best thing to do is execute it well, deliver it brilliantly, get those people gone, and once those people are gone, then that's the bit that you do next, which is your internal communication. Explain that everybody else, that's it. We did one hit, we took everybody out. We were quite severe in the cuts, but that's it. Now we're not planning on doing any more redundancies. And then talk about the way forward, put the business plan together, get everybody involved in it. The golden rule with change management is involve everyone it's going to affect, and obviously redundancies in agencies is going to affect everybody one way or another. And be transparent. I honestly think that if you're open and honest with your employees, that goes a long way. Okay, and then motivation. Sorry, I've just jumped one too far ahead. Okay, that's me. I'm going to pass over to Amy.
Amy, before we carry on, what are the views of the both of you as to whether there might be an extension to the furlough scheme beyond the end of June?
I'm not entirely sure the revenue could afford it, to be honest. I think they severely underestimated how many people have been furloughed, and I think they're pushing it to the end of June is probably about the limit. But I could be wrong. But I'm not entirely sure there's going to be another extension. I don't know if Amy's got a different opinion to that.
No, I don't know, to be honest. I think they've said, haven't they, that they'll keep it going for as long as they need to. I guess hopefully by the end of June, that's quite a way away, considering kind of how far we've come in the last couple of months. That hopefully by then they anticipate that it'll be over, or at least kind of going that way. But yeah, I wouldn't be able to say. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that they've had to extend it because we're all still on lockdown and in isolation, and the two have to run in tandem, to be honest. I mean, to end it prematurely would have been very foolish because it's a job retention scheme at the end of the day. And if they don't carry it on and people end up having to make people redundant, then all of the grants that are claimed in the interim period will have been completely wasted. So I think it will run in tandem with lockdown, and I think generally people are hoping that we'll start to return to work at the end of at the end of sort of May, June. So the two will run together, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously, hopefully for some people, you might have furloughed your employees purely because in the current situation you have no work, and that your projects that you have currently are just on pause, and that kind of when we all come out of this, you'll just be able to just hit the ground running and start back up again. So in that instance, I imagine coming back to work after being furloughed is probably going to take some getting used to. There might be changes to the ways that you work. So there might be still some social distancing measures in place. Obviously, what that looks like, we don't know, but there might be, and it might change the way that you work. Also, in terms of your pipeline, that's going to look very different to where you was expecting it to be in July, also with your business plan. So you might want to have some kind of mini induction to your employees on coming back. So just a bit more of a company update, messages from leadership, just kind of giving them an understanding of where you were supposed to be, where you've ended up, and where you plan to go next. Also, obviously, making sure their systems are working. If they've been furloughed, a lot of their access might have been restricted or cut off. There's nothing more frustrating for you and them coming back on day one and their system, they can't log on. So yeah, make sure that that's all up to date before they kind of come back. You could arrange a lunch, so get everyone socialising again. You've probably been talking over Zoom and Teams, I'm sure, but nothing's quite the same as face to face. So after this period, if you can get everyone together socialising for a couple of hours out of that first week, just celebrating the fact that you've come out the other side and you're back to it. I think everyone pretty much deserves that. So that could be a really good thing to just motivate everyone right from day one. You might want to offer phased returns. So 4 months, essentially, they could have been away from the business. That's quite a long time. So you might want to offer them the chance of using their holiday to have a bit of shorter weeks in the first couple of weeks running in. That also takes away the issue of too much holiday to use towards the end of the year. You don't have to do this. If you do, I would just make sure that everyone's communicating to make sure that it's spread out and not everyone's taking the same couple of days off for the first few weeks. But that could be quite good to get people just back into the swing of things. And again, as ever, communicate. So there might be some people that are actually quite anxious about returning, and if they are, just talk to them about any measures that you can put in place, or you might have already put in place to ease their concerns. I'm sure a lot of your employees are client facing and they go out and about, so just talking to them and making sure that their anxieties are kind of eased as much as possible. So giving feedback is always important, and definitely now more than ever. So like I said, 4 months uncertain about their future, probably had in the back of their mind worries about redundancy, because that's constantly being mentioned after any kind of furlough, in the news or in the media. Talk to them, give them feedback, give them a bit of a boost. That can go such a long way, a lot further than people probably even realise. And then think about the rewards. So it doesn't necessarily have to be financial. Perhaps you can give someone an early Friday finish, maybe a longer lunch break. Again, just to give them a bit of a boost and get them motivated again. On the other hand, people might not have been furloughed. So just like us, we're all working from home. So there are still considerations for those. Exactly the same as coming back from furlough, people coming back working from home, they've not seen anyone in a really long time. You know, arrange a lunch, get them socialising, get them talking again. I'm sure there's been lots and lots of communication over email and over Zoom again and over Teams, but obviously nothing's quite the same, is it, as a face-to-face. This might be for the more generous employers out there, but you could consider later starts for the first couple of weeks. So obviously, you know, we've all got used to waking up, having a shower, getting dressed into comfy clothes, popping downstairs, making a cup of tea and logging on just before 9 a.m. Kind of fast forward to July, we've got to get up, get ready, actually be presentable, get the kids to school or childcare, wherever you need to go before you actually commute, then commute into London and be in the office for 9 a.m. So you might want to consider just a later start for the first couple of weeks. The last thing you want is people burning out by 11 a.m. because they're not used to being on the go for that amount of time. One thing that might have come out of all of this that is quite positive is that it might actually show you that, you know, flexible working really does work and it is possible. We know it's a really big topic in this sector, and we also know that it's something employees really rate, and we know that candidates look for it. So obviously a lot of really talented people over this period might have found themselves out of work through absolutely no fault of their own. And at the point that you come back, you might at some point between July and December be looking to recruit, and you're going to have a huge pool of people that are really talented. And we know that one of the things they look for is flexibility. If you can use this to formalise a flexible working policy based on how it's worked throughout this period, it could be really good for you. And then another thing people might struggle with coming back is just how autonomous they've been able to be while working from home, and kind of coming into the office again, working to policy and sticking by procedures and stuff like that. So it might be worth just looking at some of your more rigid policies that you have in place and seeing if you can relax them just slightly.
Amy, there's a question come in that I know you'll be able to answer. So somebody's got an employee who recently went from full-time to part-time for a period of just 3 months at their request, and this is sort of pre the whole pandemic. They've now been placed on furlough. So should the agency be paying 80% of their original full-time salary or of their reduced short-time working salary?
Well, in terms of the reference pay period is obviously the pay period closest to the 19th of March. So if we're following the guidelines in the strictest sense, it would be that pay. However, there are times, so for example, maternity, or if people have been off on leave, then you're using their actual salary rather than the reference pay period. So I'm not sure if there's a contract in place and there's a definite end date, if it would then return to the full salary. We might need to kind of look that up and come back to them.
Yeah, okay, so maybe that's a bit more detail needed on that one. And another question as well, oh no, I've lost it now. Yeah, somebody was asking, maybe this is one for me, somebody was asking, are the majority of people topping up to the original salaries, or are most people just going for the £2,500 government amount? In the survey that we did, it was roughly 50-50. So of those furloughing, roughly 50% of them were topping up and roughly 50% of them weren't topping up. So I think it really does depend on the agency's individual financial circumstances and depending how hard hit.
But we seem to have lost Esther. I'll carry on for now, and then hopefully when Esther comes back, she can carry on. But yeah, I understand what she was saying was it was 50-50. So the same with my clients as well. We've got half of them kind of topping up. They're not even necessarily all topping up to 100%. They might just be doing kind of 10% in the middle, or topping up those that are over the 2,500 to what would be their 80%. But it's down to you guys. Okay, so in terms of the next steps, so we spoke about furlough, we spoke about short-time working. What happens when lockdown lifts and travel is allowed again? So we touched on it a little bit earlier about holiday, and potentially people could have their full year's entitlement to take between July and December. The government announced a couple of weeks ago that you can carry over holiday that you can't take because of coronavirus into the next 2 holiday years. This just gives employers a bit of leeway. So obviously your normal holiday rules apply. So if you can't accommodate requests, you can still refuse them. There isn't a cap on the number of holidays that can be carried over. So if you can't accommodate all of your requests, you can refuse them knowing that the employee isn't going to lose their entitlement. So the employee doesn't have to worry because they know they're going to keep it, and you don't have to worry about any kind of backlash. What it does do is it supersedes any of your contractual caps for carryover. So if you have in your contract that people can only carry over 5 days of their holiday entitlement into the next year, this supersedes that. Another option is to enforce holiday. So again, as Richard mentioned earlier, you can force it with the correct notice. So if you want everyone to take a couple of weeks at some point, as long as you give 4 weeks notice, then you can do that. So it's double the amount of days that you want them to take. And another option is to sell it. So the only thing to bear in mind with this is that you can't sell anything that makes them fall below the statutory minimum. So if you've got an employee who's got 26 days holiday entitlement, they've only managed to take 15, they can sell 6, but they have to carry over the 5. They can't sell over anything that takes them below that statutory minimum. And then not a lot has been said about this so far, but you know, what happens when this is all over? I guess it's likely to be the most worrying time in pretty much anyone's lives that we've seen, aside from those that were kind of around during the wars and stuff like that. But those that are working, it's probably the most worrying time. So well-being, I guess now more than ever, is going to be really important. So we've spoken a lot about the EAP, and this could be really key. So it costs very little and the benefits are absolutely huge. Some people might have spent a lot of time being locked away, they might have been shielding, they might have been self-isolating. It might be that they've had people close to them, they've lost people close to them, or they've been particularly ill themselves. So mental health, kind of coming back from this, is going to be really, really important, and making sure that we look after our employees. Critical incident stress management workshops. So not many people have really heard of these, but they're really good. So it's a one-off session, and they're used a lot during incidents that have affected a large number of people within an organisation. So they were used a lot after, you know, the 7/7 bombings years ago. They're used after perhaps there's been a fire in the office, or someone has suddenly passed away, a colleague. And I guess now more than ever, this is a time when they would be really useful. So it just helps employees process what they've been through, basically. So it's an external qualified professional that comes in to run the workshop. And the research shows that that is really, really good for employees. Most people now have first aiders. Mental health first aiders is another thing, so that you can have a selection of employees be mental health first aiders. And they're there just to identify if there might be a concern from an individual. So the individuals can speak to them, they're qualified, they're trained to deal with this sort of thing, and they will identify if there's a concern. If you've got an EAP scheme, they can put them in touch with the EAP. And then another thing is always communication again. So have regular one-to-ones with your staff. You know, make sure that your employees feel comfortable to speak to you if they're struggling, if they've got any concerns, and then just encourage two-way communication again within their colleagues as well. So encourage team discussion. So that's the end of the presentation. Esther's not managed to come back on yet. So if we just go through some of the questions that have already been asked. Sorry. Richard, are you unmuted?
Yes, I am unmuted.
Okay. Are you happy for me to ask the questions and for you to
Absolutely.
answer them now?
Fire away.
Okay, so someone's asked, is the holiday carryover for key industries only, or is it for everyone?
No, it looks like it's for everyone. So originally when it came out, it said it was for key industries, and then you read all of the blurb, and then the last sentence basically says that it's for anyone. So it's not, I think originally it was set up because things like the NHS and food and distribution and stuff like that, they genuinely couldn't take their holiday. But the way that we're looking at it now is that actually it's affecting everybody in so many different ways, including the furlough, that actually it looks like it's going to be for everybody. They haven't come out to say that it isn't, and there hasn't been any further guidance on which specific industries it is. So yes, as it stands today, it looks like it could be anyone.
Okay, someone else has asked, if someone works 3 days a week, is the maximum furlough pay 3/5 of 2,500?
No, it's not quite that. It's not quite, it doesn't quite work like that. So the maximum claim is 2,500. So it's based on the salary. So if someone has 100 grand a year, the maximum that you're going to get is 2,500. But if they earn 100 grand a year and you're paying them, they're working 3 days a week, then they're actually getting 60,000 a year. So you're basing the claim on that. So it'd still be 2,500. It wouldn't be 3/5 of 2,500.
Okay, someone's asked us to just clarify the bank holiday bit again. So should we be paying 100%?
Yeah, the absolutely clarity on this is you should be paying 100% because it is a statutory holiday, so they're entitled to be paid at their full rate. The bit that the bit that's so unclear is whether or not you can claim it back. So it says that if people normally work a bank holiday, then yes, they can claim it. They can claim it back at the 80%. If they don't normally work it, it should be paid at the 100%. But what it says in the guidelines is it should be topped up. So the fact it's saying topped up makes you think that you could make the claim on it. But when you go into the portal to do the claim, it doesn't distinguish whether or not you're claiming for a bank holiday or you're claiming for a day. So it looks like it's so grey, and I'm so sorry that I can't give any more clarity on this, because until they come out with any, we just haven't got any. But generally most people now are putting the claim in for the 80%, and then they're topping up to the full salary. So whether that's the other 20% or maybe a bit more, depending on what their annual salary is. So hopefully that gives some clarity. I don't know if I've explained that as well as I can, Amy, and whether or not you can add any more to it.
No, I think that's it, isn't it? We just don't know at the moment, unfortunately. So we know that it's 100%. It could be 20%. It could be 100% that you have to add in to the final pay. But yeah, unfortunately, until someone actually puts it into the portal, we won't know. So hopefully
it's been a real bone of contention, this, about the whole, because when you go back to where furlough came from, so prior to furlough was layoff. Layoff's always been around for us in the UK. Furlough is just a new term, and with layoff, it's a workless day. So what happened when the layoff regulations came out was that actually you can lay everybody off, but they weren't allowed to take holiday, because if they all decided that they were going to take holiday, laying them off was pointless, because you'd have to pay them all the 100%. So when furlough came out, we applied the same logic to that as we did to this, whereas loads of other organisations were applying the working time regulations and the Employment Rights Act, which is right, because you can't, people are entitled to holiday, etc. But really, we're still talking about layoff. So the whole holiday bit, genuinely, if you look at that legislation, no, you can't. You can't request holiday in that period, but the government has said that you can, which is great, because good clarity on that, but it doesn't give us any clarity whatsoever on whether or not we can actually claim it. And my worry is that if ACAS puts something out saying you can, but they're wrong, there's no comeback on ACAS, is there? But you then go and claim it, and then you find out that actually you weren't supposed to, and that you have to pay it back. Or you get fined, or the repercussions are massive. So we are genuinely lobbying now to say that we want more information on this, and we need the government to provide it.
Yeah, we've had another question about people cancelling their holidays. So everyone's cancelling their holiday now between March and May, because obviously their travels are cancelled. What can we do to combat that?
Well, loads of companies are saying that you can't. So basically, the holiday is still a request, isn't it? It's not. They're not entitled to have it on the day that they want it, which is why we say to people, you can't book a holiday until you've got the time off work. It works the other way as well. So if people have booked it off, you could say, actually, no one's cancelling a holiday. You've booked it, you're taking it. And as unfair as that may sound, then actually, in some respects, it's probably the fairest thing to do, because everyone's holiday plans have been cancelled, haven't they, over this period? So there's an awful lot of organisations, including MKS, actually, that said that people couldn't cancel holidays.
Yeah, just to let everyone know, we've got about 10 minutes left, so if you do have any more questions, to put them in the chat box. We've had an interesting one. So obviously, when someone's in the office or working and they don't turn up, it's really easy to know, and they're AWOL and you follow the disciplinary procedures. What if someone's not available remotely?
Oh, right, that's a question for me. Well, actually, they're supposed to be, aren't they? So people have worked from home for years, and the fact is that the employment relationship is that you do some work. Simply, turning your computer on in the morning and then and not doing anything and then turning it off in the evening is not considered as work. So there has to be deliverables. So really what what we said right at the start of this was, if you can have Zoom meetings regularly during the course of the day, make sure that people are able to pick up. You can have some visibility as well, depending on the software that you're on, and you can see who's logged on at any time and all that sort of stuff. I think it's really important to balance it though, because what you don't want to do is play Big Brother. You want to allow flexibility where you can, but I think you have to hammer home that the only reason that you're working from home is because there's work to do. And if you're not working from home and there is no work to do, then there's other options. And that includes things like redundancy and all that sort of stuff. So that, you should. It is annoying when you ring somebody and they don't answer the phone when they're supposed to be working, because you're right, if they're in the office they'd be there, wouldn't they? But it is this is just a management responsibility now.
Okay. Can we force people to take holiday so I mentioned about phased returns earlier, can we force people to take holiday to actually accommodate that?
Yeah, we can. So this goes back again. So to previous legislation, where as long as you give twice as much notice to the holiday that's being requested, then actually you can. So, for example, if you want someone to take a week off, you give them 2 weeks' notice, and you're forcing the holiday to be taken. Most organisations do it every year anyway, without realising they're doing it. When they ask people to hold 3 days back for Christmas, you're doing exactly the same thing. We're just doing it on a different part of the year for what may seem to be no particular reason, but that yes, you can force the holiday. I think the thing is to think about the knock-on effects of all of this, and they're still employees. We've still got to treat them really well. When the dust settles and we're out of the woods, what we don't want is people leaving in droves because they deem that you've treated them badly over this period. So I think whatever you decide to do it fairly, explain it, communicate, the golden rule of change management, all of that, then the people are more likely to buy into it. And the whole furlough in the first place, most people's contracts didn't have short time working or layoff in it. I doubt anyone had furlough in it, but most people are okay being furloughed. They kind of get it. They understand the situation that we're in, and in exactly the same way that this whole holiday allocation should work as well. And if you communicate it properly and well enough, then it shouldn't be a massive issue.
Okay. And then what about restricting holiday? So say everyone comes back and you need them to just kind of get on with sales and get projects in. Can you restrict holiday?
Yeah, of course. It's a holiday request, isn't it? It's not a holiday right. So if in any normal year, if everybody wanted to book the first week of September off, you'd say no, wouldn't you? So this works exactly the same way. And I know the whole first come first serve basis is probably going to be a bit difficult, but I think it's certainly fair to try and balance it out. And, organisations, and particularly in this sector, have to every year over the Christmas period, because some people still have to do work, and you can't have the same people off over Christmas every year in, year out, and you have to balance it. So it works in exactly the same way. So yes, I think a fair approach to everybody is the key here. Okay,
back to furlough. So can you talk us through Flipflop furloughing, which is a Tim Stovall's fan favourite term, but because someone's asked if you can have someone on furlough for 3 weeks, come back, do a project, and then go off again.
Yeah, you can. There's the guidance says, the guidance is absolutely clear on this. Yes, you can. So whether or not this is furlough rotation or flip-flop or whatever, yes, someone can do 3 weeks of furlough. They can't do any work over that period of time. They can come back for a period of time. They might come back for 10 days, for example, and then they can go off for another 3 weeks. The only thing is that if they do less than 3 weeks on furlough, which they can, because you could ask them to do a week, you just can't put a claim in. So you can furlough them, but you won't be able to recover that money from the government. So that could be your decision that actually we only want to furlough for this 1 week period, and because we haven't got to give them anything, but you only have to pay 80% of 2,500 or 2,500, and that might be a decision you make. But yes, you can flip-flop, and I'm not entirely sure that's going to be a technical term that's going to be used in the future, but yes, you can.
Okay, and what benefits apply while you're furloughed?
Everything. You're still an employee. You might have workless days, but you're still entitled to all the benefits. So the holiday accruals are still there. Your EAP access is still there, unless you've got something specific about retaining the laptop or the mobile phone, or to a bigger extent the company car. Unless you've got something in the contract that says over a period of non-work, we request the right to hold them or have them back. Then no, that everything's the same.
Okay. Someone said here that they currently have no work for their employees, so they've stopped paying them. They don't yet have furlough agreements in place, but can they use the job retention scheme and then backdate a claim?
Yeah, that's dangerous. There's technically, I suppose you could, but it's got to be from the point that you furloughed your employees. The reason that it was in the first place backdated to the 1st of March was because people that had been made redundant could be reinstated, and then you could go back to that period. So that was legitimate. To say to people that when we work for you go home, and then suddenly make a decision 3 weeks later that actually we're going to do it as a furlough and we're going to claim off the government scheme, could be seen as abuse of the scheme. But yeah, there might be a bit more detail in that around that question anyway, where the fact that they're not working and whether or not you effectively did furlough them when you sent them off and said that when you sent them off and said that you're not working, then actually, yeah, maybe they technically were furloughed. But I'm happy to have a look at that separately.
Okay. Someone's asked what EAP schemes would we recommend?
Well, there are a number of EAP schemes available, but the one that we recommend is Health Assured, and they're owned by one of our biggest competitors. But actually, we've got a advisor who we think are the best, and whilst there are loads of them, don't get me wrong, there's hundreds and hundreds of them. There are a couple of things about the Health Assured one that I think are really good, and I'd recommend you look at that first.
Yeah, the Health Assured one, they actually offer that critical incident stress management workshop as well. So they do a lot more beyond just the EAP scheme as well. So they are really good.
Yeah, it is as well. They've got some really good stats around getting people back to work who've been off with stress, and stress is one of our biggest bugbears at the moment. And people, they say they're stressed all the time. It's so easily thrown out. But I would. They also do up to 10 days of 10 sessions of one-to-one counselling and stuff. And there's a whole load of other stuff. We don't get paid for it. We're not going to get a kickback. We're genuinely just saying it's them because we think they're probably the best best that we've seen.
Yeah. So that's all the questions answered, and it's actually worked out quite well in terms of timings. I just wanted to mention that to have a look at our website. So we do have a coronavirus hub on the website. So if you have a look, we're constantly updating the FAQs, and if there's any announcement or update, we're putting it on there. I believe this will also be sitting on there, and there's other things for the media sector specifically that will be sitting on there as well. So if you need to make pay cuts for employees, there's some guidance documents on that as well. If there's any more questions, I guess now's the time to type them as quickly as you possibly can for us to catch them. But if not, just thank you for listening to us. We hope we answered everything. And if there is anything in the meantime, obviously, just give us a shout.
I have one massive piece of advice, which is don't look at historic guidance. If you look at anything that's more than 3 or 4 days old, you could be in the wrong place. So I know that we sent out our frequently asked questions to a whole load of our clients on the 27th of March or something like that, and by the 31st it's out of date and we were having to update it, which is why I think go to the Corona hub on our website. Have a look at that. I know we just updated our frequently asked questions today. That should hit that at some point tonight, and that does go into a bit more detail about the holidays and everything like that. But again, that is going to change. We know that they're still looking at it. They've announced they're going to keep looking at it. It will. I guarantee within the next week we'll be writing something else about holidays and hopefully adding a bit more clarity to it and everything else.
Yeah. Okay. We are having more questions coming in. So. If an employee was due to return from maternity on the 1st of April, can they be furloughed on their usual salary? So, yeah, that would be their normal salary rather than the reference period that you can use. And then someone's asked about if there's any support for company directors because they can't be furloughed.
They can be furloughed.
Yeah. Do you want to explain?
Well, yeah, company directors can be furloughed. If you've got a PAYE, or you pay yourself on a PAYE, then yes, you can be furloughed, and you can undertake some activity for the business. So you can do things like file the accounts. You can file the claim at the revenue for the other furloughed employees. It's whether or not, if you only pay yourself a modest amount, it's whether or not it's even worth it. So but aside of that, there's the loans that are available as well, which is it's kind of a little bit outside of our expertise, but yes, there are other things that are available for company directors. But yes, you can furlough.
Can you hear me, Amy and Richard? I've managed to get back in, but my video's not working. But is my audio working?
Yes,
It
we can
is,
hear
yes.
you.
It is. Oh, hi. Sorry, apologies, everyone. I don't know what happened. I think my whole internet went down. Yeah, you're right. So the directors can they can be furloughed, but of course, if you're paying yourself a combination of a very low salary topped up heavily by dividends, and of course it's, you know, the furlough grant is by reference to the salary amount, and the dividends can't be taken into account. So as Richard said, if you're paying yourselves a very low amount, you know, the monetary benefit may not be worth it, but you can still furlough yourself. I think, you know, directors, particularly those taking lots of dividends and one-man bands, have fallen down a lot of the cracks in all of this government support. So I think there is a lot of lobbying going on with government to try and fill those gaps, but I think there's still, it's pretty insufficient at the moment.
Okay. If that's everything, I guess me and Richard and Esther will just mute ourselves for now and leave our contact details on the screen so that you can take our details. If you've got any more specific questions, feel free to contact us. But for now, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.